how did I get into anthropology? Well, I was born as an anthropologist. I was born in 1941 on the borders of India and Burma, in a famous tea-producing area called Assam. And my father was, it was the Second World War, my father was there as a tea planter and then recruited into the army. And so I was born there. And that meant that the first people I saw, my nurses, because you had ayahs or nurses, were hill women from the hills, Garo and Khasi Hills. So I immediately saw a different kind of Mongolian face. And I stayed there for 5 years. I learnt Indian language. I was taught Indian stories by my nurses and so on. My best friends, my friends were little Indian boys. So it was a Kipling, Rudyard Kipling kind of youth. And I think that imprinted on me a sense of another world. So when I came back to a British boarding school education, I always felt an outsider. One quality of anthropology is that they're not in the middle. They are always looking in from outside at the world. So I had to learn to be British to a certain extent in my schools. So when I went at the age of 8 to a boarding school in Oxford, I had to learn the codes, the customs, the ways of doing things. And that was a conscious effort coming from another kind of world. And I think that sort of made me interested in anthropology. Then I went on to a school and university and read British history. But there was always a bit of me which was saying, why only British history? Because my mother was in Assam still, writing me weekly letters about what was happening in India. And it seemed, an entirely different world. So when I planned what I might do with my life, if I didn't go on in academia, I was going to plan to go around the world and teach in India and elsewhere and try and find a job somewhere else outside Britain. And then I heard about anthropology, and I went to the London School of Economics and SOAS and did 2 further degrees in anthropology and realized that this was what I'd been searching for, because anthropology is not a subject. It's a way of life. It's a vocation. You don't study anthropology. You are an anthropologist. So it was like being converted to a religion, because anthropology purports to be a sort of pseudo-religion. Most of the best anthropologists in the past were either Jewish or Catholics or some other kind of religious background, because anthropology is the study of everything, and it doesn't separate off into different disciplines. And it should give you the key to why people do things and how our world works, which it did to a large extent for me. So all of that took me, but I remained interested in history and came back to Cambridge as a historian and switched back and forth. And in the end, you need both, because anthropology explains the current world to a certain extent, but not how we got here. History explains how we got here, but not the current world. And if you fuse the two together, then you have a deeper understanding.
And you mentioned the way of life of anthropology. What is that?
Well, it's always being curious about the other and trying to understand yourself in the mirror of the other. So I go to China or Japan or Nepal or other places, partly to understand them, but also to understand myself better. So it's using comparison all the time to understand your own world and their world and form bridges of understanding between the two, which has been the goal of my life. And also to see that we are not separated into bits. Modernity creates the illusion and lives on the illusion that we separate politics from economics, from society, from ideology. But that's a falsehood. It's necessary so we can compartmentalize and get on and be rational within each sphere. But in fact, we're not separated in that way, just as our minds and our bodies are not separated. And anthropology reminds us that we're not separated. And one of the great benefits is that the worlds that anthropologists usually studied in the past were worlds where things weren't separated. They were total worlds where family and economy and politics and religion were all mixed together.